Sekeres Price from Wall Center. Today's Bodog poll question: most dysfunctional Canadian NHL franchise, the Canucks, Flames, Leafs, or Senators? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter. Bodog, your source, free casino games. Stop your chortling. I've got to get through the read. Free casino games, poker strategy, sports odds. Bodog line of the day from me. We talked about Bobrovsky in the opening segment. Hey, he's the Conn Smythe favorite right now at plus 210. If you like Matthew Tkachuk, you can get him at plus 400 on your Bodog line of the day. Here's Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media, who is most amused.
Well, I've so many items right off the top here. I mean, the most recent one, the Bobrovsky versus Tkachuk thing, is hilarious because many things. I mean, I'm back from vacation. You wake up, you look at your phone, and there's just things happening. Among which I had a text from Brandon Sutter, who said, "Just got to get in."
No,
which has been his angle, but and I said, you know what? All right, but I would also personally trade for Matt Tkachuk, and he goes, no, you trade for Bobrovsky. So
Blake and I have been talking about this offline a little bit here. Like the just got to get in crowd is got some fuel for their fire this spring.
Yeah, I mean, as I think we discussed before I left, let's not forget the Florida Panthers were like, I mean, yes, it's a great story, but they're no Cinderella. They're not your conventional Cinderella.
They're not unlike the Canucks in '94, really, right? Coming off a great season the year before and just underachieving in the regular season.
Blake, do you know where the Canucks rank in playoff games played between 1990 and 1995? Do you know?
I don't.
Second.
Yeah.
So that's not a Cinderella team either. There is a quality to get in, and there's no doubt getting in is great. You can be like Seattle's get in, and you can win a round, right? But and then obviously we can look at the Leafs or Boston or whatever, and these teams that spend a ton of money. Canucks spent a ton of money in 2011, and we're one game short, but. Yeah. The point being is, and that was the point of my story, and was you still got getting in is not the whole story. There's still got to be something there, and I think even Brandon will tell you, sure, you get in, anything can happen, but you get in, and if you're actually going to make the final, having a MVP candidate helps, and having a very good goalie helps, and on and on and on and on.
As we go forward, not today, but as we go forward. I want a fuller discussion in this segment, this hit with you, Patrick, about whether or not the middle class, spread out your salary, create depth, or invest in the superstars and then try and round out the roster with the cheaper end player is the better formula, because
that's a debate that's happening too.
Yeah, that's another debate we're having, and rightfully so, because I think we're seeing examples on both sides of the ledger here as well.
Well, and I think it is a reminder that the sort of the middle class has gotten closer to the top. I mean, players are so much more skilled. Like that's
Absolutely.
The thing. Like that's the scoring story, right?
The floor of the league is pretty darn good.
The floor, Sharon and I were talking about this age. He talked about this for ages. There's sort of 50 great players in the NHL, and then a couple hundred guys that are really good, and you want to get as many of those really good guys as you can. And some of it's the luck of the draw. Like there's a toss of the coin involved in some of this. Like the Panthers, as I think I said the last time, like did they just score their goals in the regular season in the wrong order? Like they were the fourth highest scoring team in the league. They weren't an amazing defensive team, but they weren't a terrible defensive team. This is a team that should have had more than 92 points coming into the playoffs. But they only had 92 points, and so some of that was just maybe bad luck. I don't know. And there were a lot of reasons. I don't think there was any reason to say that Florida was going to be one game from the Stanley Cup final. I think there was plenty of reasons to say that they were better than their record indicated. Boston. No team is Boston was amazing, right? But there was a bit of a steamroller effect, I think, there too, and. They were still one of the all-time great regular season teams. There's no denying that, right?
But still, what Canucks fans are failing to recognize in this whole get in and anything can happen is...
No, not Canucks fans. A segment thereof.
Right.
And I think fans everywhere. I mean, it's not...
But there's no way to facilitate... There's no way to facilitate change in this offseason. Like, if the Canucks could guarantee that their improvement was linear, that they are going to be better next year, that's great. But because of their cap situation, there is no guarantee. And in fact, to even just be cap compliant, you can make the argument they might have to get worse next year because they're going to have to get rid of guys that are currently on the roster making decent freight that are contributors to this team right now.
Yeah, and that is in the end. It's not just sort of hoping that Oliver Ekman-Larsson will not be the broken foot player he was last year. You know, it is exactly that. They have to find a way. They've got too many wingers. They're going to have to get rid of somebody in probably a way that is less, almost certainly less than optimal. Whether that's a buyout or you're trading a guy and trading someone else to get that guy off your list, on and on and on. You're right. I mean, the good thing for them continues to be that it looks like Thatcher Demko is the Thatcher Demko we thought he would be. And Elias Pettersson obviously is certainly a shining star, if not still ascending as such. Quinn Hughes was outstanding, and as we discussed, I think is a top 10 defenseman in this league. And there are some interesting secondary pieces like JT Miller and
Philip Hronek, we haven't seen the full season.
We'll see what Hronek. There's a things that, but to get there, they're still going to have to make some decisions. And again, having those terrible contracts in OEL and Tyler Myers, that desire from ownership to have guys like that on the roster that look fancy and shiny and exciting, is going to be a very difficult thing to maneuver around.
And I think it's fair to say that Alvin is going to be judged on the Hronek deal, much like Benning was ultimately judged and fired on the OEL.
Absolutely.
Moving on to Vitali Kravtsov, who had 2 points in 16 games as a Vancouver Canuck after being acquired from the New York Rangers for Will Lockwood and a 7th-round pick. It was a worthwhile gamble on a one-time top 10 pick. He is now signed for not exactly a ton of money. You'll have to explain that to us with Chelyabinsk in the KHL. And yet the Vancouver Canucks can qualify him as a restricted free agent by June 30th, Patrick, and then just basically watch him for 2 years in Russia and maybe get a 25, 26-year-old who's found his game in a couple of years. This is pretty decent news if you're going to lose a player, frankly.
Yeah, no, there's certainly, I fully would expect them to qualify him at this point. I mean, there was a question, I think, when he was still a free agent, whether that might happen just because you look at, there is past precedent. You look at the Canucks, not this regime, but this team has done this in the past, and other teams do it. There are players that sometimes you're going, that qualifying offer is pretty steep. I'm not sure we're going to do that, but maybe we can do something else around the edges. Derek Pouliot is the one that sort of springs to mind, not for any particular reason other than I thought of his name first. I have no expectation they wouldn't qualify him. And there is a long ago lesson in not qualifying guys, which it would be Igor Larionov when in the early 90s when the Canucks let him walk back to Switzerland. And for some reason that's still unclear to me, Berkey and Pat Quinn decided not to do that era's version of the qualifying offer to at least keep his rights, and then lost him for nothing. And then he came back and ended up, of course, being a true star in the league. So I'm not in any way suggesting Vitali Kravtsov is the next Igor Larionov, but it is very much a case of why you keep doing this. You want to keep everybody in your stable as long as you can.
Well, it's free development, right?
It's free. And in the end, in this particular case, it's free development. I mean, obviously, Nikita Triumkin was a similar story. The Canucks held his rights forever. He's no longer with the Canucks, but that was a guy that I think certainly the Benning regime was okay. Well, we gave him a go. We would be interested. I mean, certainly that year where he was making a lot of noise, him and his agent Todd Diamond made a lot of noise trying to come back. The Canucks, the sort of sequencing of financing, that was in COVID, wasn't it? If the sequencing of financing didn't line up.
Yeah.
Basically, they're like, can you wait? Can you wait? Can you wait? The Canucks were kind of like, can you wait? Can you wait? Can you wait? And then they couldn't. And that was a whole other cap story. And obviously, I don't think Triumkin would have made a difference, but that's, there was a guy that they thought was ready to come back and didn't come back. And I think now he's just going to spend the rest of his career in the KHL.
Yeah, most probably. We're seeing people react to this. Some saying that they saw something. Do you remember seeing something?
I found he was a nice guy to talk to. He certainly liked Vancouver. I think he was pretty unhappy in New York, and that certainly was the impression I got from him. And then obviously I had a good chat with Sergei Gonchar. One of the sort of most read stories late in the season was the story about Kravtsov that I wrote, where there was sort of this, I think, a little bit of a feeling that building this little Russian club might help him. Although, of course, there were Russians in New York. Mm-hmm. He was a guy that struck me at times as I found myself wondering if how much he liked playing hockey, and that happens. Like, that's something that was once said to me about Olli Juolevi, and that was a sort of how much passion does he have for this? Like, he recognizes he's gotten himself to this point, and it's a way to make money, but how much passion is there? And that was something I just found myself wondering. That might have just been his character, the way he presents himself, and that's just a natural state of being. And I certainly never heard him complain or say anything like that. But you did find yourself wondering how much fun he was actually having. I certainly think he had fun last season. He had a really good playoff in the KHL. But the impression I got, obviously I don't think he had any fun in New York. So was he having fun here? I don't know. Obviously not enough fun to want to come back and try to fight for a spot.
Just before we get to the Bodog poll question, we have received quite a bit of feedback on the interview we did with Gary Mason for yesterday's program on the Aquilini family and sort of ownership's workings of this organization over the last few years. What caught your ear from that?
Well, Gary certainly got to cover a much more exciting period of Canucks hockey, and as you said, he is the Francesco whisperer. He is a guy that does apparently able to have lunch. He hears from him. The one thing I found myself wondering, and I probably am going to call Gary up and ask him for his insights on this, was what, when he presents the idea that Aquilini sort of regrets hanging on to Benning as long as he did, because look what happened. There's two things there. One, he liked Benning because, Benning, it wasn't just that Benning told him what he wanted to hear. He got to run the hockey team the way he wanted to run it, in a way that, that was never going to happen with Mike Gillis, was never going to happen with Dave Nonis. I think we assume does not happen with Jim Rutherford, but who knows? The one thing I found myself wondering was not so much that, I made a mistake holding Jim on for so long, and that's created this dire situation. It's that he'll be like, well, you know what? I was right. I shouldn't have listened to Jim for so long, and I should have stuck to my guns. And as a result, coming with pressure, that we know that there was constant pressure on Benning, and that he was, that his conclusion was, well, I was right to keep all that pressure on Jim. That I was right to constantly sort of put my foot down, saying I want us to put on a big display in free agency. I want us to be chasing after big star players. They just went after the wrong star players. That I was told Tyler Myers was the guy to go for. Well, it turns out I was wrong. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was a guy that was going to save it. Well, they were wrong. I should have been talking to someone else. That's the conclusion that he'll draw from this. That was the thing that stood out to me.
One of the things I learned early on in my sports reporting career from an owner is it's very important that you can't be in a position where others see it as we won, you lost.
Right.
If you're going to be involved, you're involved in the good times and the bad.
Yeah.
If you're going to start separating yourself from the failures as the owner, that's when you've got a dysfunctional organization. That's when you're not doing you're not holding up your end of the bargain with the people that you hire.
The good news for Francesco Aquilini is no longer are the Canucks on the defensive as being the worst run franchise of the moment.
Yeah.
Because Game of Thrones is happening in Toronto right now. So there's a shiny object across the country, which is taking the heat off the Canucks for at least a brief moment in time here.
Yeah, at the same time, a team that's had very different in-season results, and that's what the frustration, postseason results. In-season and postseason results.
Very
and that's what the frustration's about. I do, the other thing I found myself thinking about as anytime ownership comes up here, is, you think about all the people you hear from who do not work there anymore, and how much happier they are. And that's sad. That's really sad, because, you talk to some of the people who, there's people that it used to be a job that was like, wow, what a great job. And yes, I will take a little bit less, but it's a great place to work. It's a fun place to work. And you don't hear that as much anymore. What you hear more than anything from people who have left is how worried they are for the people who are still there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you've heard it many times that, people go in there because they absolutely love the club. They love hockey. They love the brand. They can't believe they're working for the Vancouver Canucks. And within a reasonably short order, they go, this job isn't all that it was cracked up to be, or that I cracked it up to be, for various reasons. And in a lot of cases, that's because people are not empowered there to do their job. It is very top-down. It is very heavy-handed, ham-fisted from the top with ownership and its chosen deputies.
Chosen few, yes.
Yeah. Great to hear your voice again and see your face if you're watching on YouTube. I hope Mollis enjoyed Disneyland.
They had a great time. They were very good. Great trip with the kids.
Did miss the Patrick and Candace Mickey Mouse ears photo. I thought for sure that
there was one. I got the R2. The girls picked me the R2D2 ears. So if you look carefully, there was an R2D2. And I caught, and then I clearly the job to have at Disneyland is to be a stormtrooper, because you get to bust the balls of every father that's there.
I would think so. Did you pilot the TIE fighter, or was that?
We did not.
Else?
We didn't. It was still, the kids are still too small. We decided. So next.
Really?
Will anything replace the banana phone photo on Twitter? No, because you and an ears and R2D2 thing might be a good successor.
I'll ponder it.
Yeah.
Patrick Johnston, where are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Until next Tuesday.
Take care, guys.